Welcome inside the War Room. I'm your host, Andrew Valancourt, and we're back today for episode 57 of the Dynasty War Room podcast. On today's show, we are going to break down the 2025 rookie wide receiver class as we get ready for the upcoming NFL draft. And so I have my top 15 wide receivers broken down into tiers for you all. So we're going to discuss those players to get you ready for your Dynasty rookie drafts that are quickly approaching. So before we jump into those rankings, as always, make sure you are following this podcast on your platform of choice. We are on everything out there, so whether it's Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon, you name it, we're there. Go make sure you're following the show so you don't miss any future episodes. And go find us on social media. We're on Twitter or X at Dynasty War Room. You can find me on Blue Sky at Andrew V. Court. And we have a Facebook page, and we're on YouTube as well. Go subscribe there for some future video content at the same handle as everything else at Dynasty War Room. And with all that being said, let's jump on into today's show and get to some wide receivers. So I think that where we're going to start today's show is with Travis Hunter. So arguably the biggest question of this entire draft class for fantasy football purposes is whether or not Travis Hunter is going to be a full-time wide receiver in the NFL or not. So he has two rankings essentially in this top 15. So right now, Travis Hunter is my number one overall wide receiver, which is under the assumption that he plays full-time wide receiver in the league. In previous episodes, we have talked about him as being a part-time wide receiver or not really being sure whether or not he's going to play a full allotment of snaps at wide receiver, which of course pushes him down the rankings. So in our overall top 24 episode that was a few weeks ago, he was further down the list, kind of a borderline first, second round pick. And I've kind of talked about him that way most of this draft season. So given that we are now only a couple weeks away from the draft, I wanted to present both sides of the equation for Travis Hunter. So Travis Hunter, if he plays full-time wide receiver, is my number one receiver in the class. Obviously out of Colorado, projected to be a top 4 pick. A lot of talk right now about the Browns at number 2 and certainly the Giants at number 3. And then I would be stunned if he were to make it past number 4 to the New England Patriots. So 21.8 years old, 6 foot, 188 pounds. If he plays wide receiver, he will be my number one player at the position. If he is a part-time wide receiver, or we don't get a full commitment as to, yes, he's going to play full-time at the position, or it's something along the lines of, hey, we're going to figure it out. We know he can do both. We're going to try him at both, that sort of thing, which is probably what I'm expecting. He will be further down this list, and I think as of right now, and again, this is going to depend on what a GM says, how he's announced the draft, all these silly little things that you wouldn't think you'd have to worry about with a first-round pick in terms of your dynasty drafts, it's going to matter. So if Travis Hunter is not a guaranteed full-time receiver, the team doesn't come out and say, yes, he's going to play 100% of snaps at the position, he will be my number 4 wide receiver behind a few of these other guys here that we're going to talk about in a moment. But he's still going to be above kind of that second grouping of players. I think the risk reward will be worth it ahead of some of these guys that are going to go in the second round. And that's because, again, I believe that an NFL team is going to understand that Travis Hunter can be an elite level wide receiver in the NFL. It's an impact position, and why would you not play an elite player at the position where he can make the most impact for your team? And I think that's going to be at wide receiver. Certainly, he's a very good corner as well, so that throws a wrench into things. I would not want to be left holding the bag, which is why unless we get some sort of commitment shortly after the draft that he's going to play receiver, that's why I wouldn't take him with a top 5 or 6 rookie pick. But again, if we are operating under the assumption that he will play wide receiver, I think he's a better player than Ted McMillan, especially in terms of fantasy football. I think he's He's a dynamic athlete. He can do it all. He's got speed. He can run. He's got great hands. We saw the big playability, of course, at Colorado. And so last season, 96 catches, 1,258 yards, and 15 touchdowns, of course, winning the Heisman Trophy, and was named the best wide receiver in all of college football. So there's a lot to like about Travis Hunter. I think he clearly stands out as the number one player in this class at wide receiver if he plays there. So I know a lot of caveats there, a lot of, well, let's see what happens, and that's the unfortunate reality of where we are with this draft class. But I do believe that Travis Hunter would be right there as the potential 102 in rookie drafts behind Ashton Genty if the Browns or the Giants or the Patriots come out and say, yes, he's going to play receiver and we'll sprinkle him in on defense, or hey, we're gonna have him play full-time on both. If we get that commitment, I think ultimately he's going to stick better at wide receiver, and so that's how I see it right now. Of course, from a practicality standpoint, it's easier, in my opinion, to play someone as a full-time corner and then a part-time wide receiver. And we talked about this probably about a month ago on the show, but just looking at it logically, it's easier to take a guy on and off the field when you're on offense at receiver and you put him on plays that, high impact third downs or in the red zone, or specifically when you're looking to get him the ball. It's harder to take a guy out on defense because then, of course, you leave open, you put in a backup on that receiver and the quarterback can target him on that play. It's a little bit different of a scenario. So lots of moving parts, but if Travis Hunter is wide receiver, he'll be my number one player at the position. And whether he goes 102 or 103 in your rookie drafts at that point, I think will depend on how many running backs go in the first round of the NFL draft. So if Amarian Hampton goes in the first round, if Travion Henderson goes in the first round, I will still have a first round running back over any of these wide receivers. So I don't necessarily see more than 2, maybe 3. So I think worst case scenario, you're talking about Travis Hunter as the 104, and you'd have those running backs ahead of him. But if there's only Ashton Genty that goes in the first round, Travis Hunter goes 2 or 3 and is a wide receiver, I think he could be the 102. I mean, he's that good of a player. So if we get some confirmation that we don't have to sit here and worry about his situation, he's going to be a great pick. So moving on to 102, and there are 2 players here in my first tier, and it's Travis Hunter and Tet McMillan out of Arizona, also projected to be a first-round pick. And there's been some ups and downs for McMillan over the draft process, but 22 years old, 6'4", 219 pounds, really good year at Arizona in 2024, 84 receptions, 1,319 yards with 8 touchdowns. So Tet McMillan, he's not going to be necessarily for everyone because he is one of those big body outside X receivers. He's not necessarily someone that I see turning into a Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors style of player. He's just not that type of athlete, but he is someone that I think can be, a T. Higgins, a Cortland Sutton, one of those bigger guys on the outside, a deep threat, strong hands, really good ability to catch the football. I worry a little bit about his separation, his release off the line, but I do think that everything else he does is, very, very strong. And so I think for those reasons, he's still going to be near the top of my wide receiver board. It's just a matter of whether he's going to be first or second again with the whole Travis Hunter issue. But I will have full confidence taking McMillan in the early portion of my rookie drafts, especially if he gets a good landing spot. I know it's been a little bit all over the place. At one point, he was being mocked in the top 10. Talk about the Patriots or the Saints, the Jets. There are a number of teams that could use a receiver. But we've also seen some mock drafts lately where he falls into the 20s. And, I guess there's an argument there to be made of, is that a better type of scenario where he's on a playoff team or just a stronger organization as a whole? Or would it be better to have him go in the top 10 to a bad organization or a team that could certainly use the help a little bit more and see how things play out? So we'll see what happens. I know the Cowboys are another team that could use a number 2, and that's where things get a little bit tricky is, what if he ends up on a situation or on a team where he is projected to be the number 2 receiver. So if he's in Dallas, he's clearly going to be behind CeeDee Lamb. Or, if he goes to New Orleans, it's then a matter of, okay, how does he fit in with Chris Olave, who is more of a route running over the middle type of guy, and that's where I see the fit for McMillan from an NFL standpoint is he's going to be an outside guy, so a nice complement. But for fantasy, who would be the wide receiver 1? My inclination would probably be that it's still going to be Olave. So I would love to see him go somewhere where he can be the clear-cut number 1 option, or at least project him to become that over the next 2 to 3 seasons. So that landing spot will matter a little bit, but he's still going to be either the first or second wide receiver off my board, depending on how Travis Hunter plays out. Moving on to tier number 2 and wide receiver number 3 in my rankings, and that is going to be Luther Burden, wide receiver out of Missouri, projected first or second round draft capital. He's kind of one of those guys that's going at the 1-2 turn, and 21.3 years old, 6 foot, 206 pounds, and last year at Missouri, 61 receptions, 676 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He did have over 1,200 yards as a sophomore, and of course that was his big breakout elite season that people kind of fall back on because his junior season was not so great. Not that it was bad, but from a numbers standpoint, we obviously were hoping for another 1,000-yard season, potentially to grow on that sophomore year with 1,200 yards, and it just didn't happen. So quarterback play was an issue, but at the same time, you can't blame the fall off entirely on the quarterback. I think that there are some concerns with Luther Burden's ability to be more of a downfield weapon. The way I see Luther Burden is he is probably the highest risk, highest reward receiver in this class because I think his ceiling is extremely high. I mean, he's got good size. He's got, good speed and shiftiness. He's got the agility to make guys miss. He's extremely elite with the ball in his hands. He's a good yak guy. He can get open, but he's not someone that is really known as a downfield threat. He had a lot of screen passes, a lot of manufactured touches, and sometimes those things don't translate well to the NFL, and all of a sudden you could be looking at a massive bust. So low floor, very high ceiling, and I think that's why you see some teams potentially scared off, and the talk of him being a first-round pick has fallen off a little bit. Seems a little bit more likely at this point that he goes in the first few picks in the second round. Maybe, eliminates a little bit of the risk for an NFL team in doing that. But from a fantasy perspective, I don't think we're talking about like a Malachi Corley who's, can't play on the outside, and he's just, obviously that has not worked out well through 1 year in the NFL, and we've seen that with similar players, these slot screen pass types of guys. I do think that Burden is better than that. I think that he can be, an intermediate area player in the NFL. So that's where we're talking about. He has the talent. He has the ability. We just need to see maybe another step up in terms of play style at the NFL level. And that, of course, is going to bring some risk. So there are going to be some people that love Luther Burden. There are also going to be people that have him very far down their list of receivers on their board. And I am a fan. I like him. So I do have him here at number 3. And he would be ahead of Travis Hunter if Hunter is not a full-time receiver. So like we mentioned, Hunter would fall to 4 in that scenario. And Burden would move up to 2. But right now, I'm just really hoping for first-round draft capital and that he ends up in an offense that can use him properly, because I think the ceiling, again, very high, and it would be a big boost to rookie drafts to have another good first-round option at this position. Because going through this list, let me tell you, this is not a great receiver class. I think it is really lacking depth. I think there are some solid options here that we're going to get to in, that might go in the second round of rookie drafts. But every single player, really from the top down, I mean, starting with Travis Hunter and Tet McMillan, every single player has some sort of red flag or concern or something that should worry you just a little bit about them. Whether it's Hunter and what position he's going to play, McMillan, can he be, a high level separator? Luther Burden, is he going to be someone that can be more of an intermediate outside receiver, or if he does stay in the slot, which, good chance he does, can he avoid just being a screen manufactured touch player? Treylon Burks was somebody that came out of school a few years ago, and he was a manufactured touch guy that people thought had the size and ability to play, a bigger role in the NFL, and it obviously didn't work out there. I do think that Luther Burden is better than Treylon Burks, but, we've seen some of those guys. Everyone likes to comp players of this, size and skill to players like Debo and stuff like that, and it very rarely ever works out. But there's some upside, some downside, and then as we go down this list, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each one. And there's red flags all across the board for this entire class. So really, there are 4 wide receivers that I really feel good about in this class. So Hunter, McMillan, Burden, and now my number 4 player, who is also in tier 2, and that's Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. Projected either late first, early second round pick. And he's 22.4 years old, 6'1", 202 pounds. Last year at Ohio State, 81 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 10 touchdowns. And Egbuka is somebody that I think is almost the opposite of Luther Burden in terms of risky, how risky he is and his, what his upside and downside is. Because Egbuka is somebody that I think is very safe. I think he has a very high floor. But I also don't know that he necessarily has a wide receiver 1 ceiling. So I think we're talking about a guy who's going to slot in as an NFL team's number 2 wide receiver. I think he will be a very good, solid, capable player, but I don't necessarily see him becoming, a top 12 receiver in the league, or even being a wide receiver 1 on his own team necessarily. I think he's just a better fit as a number 2, which certainly has a very important place both in the NFL and in fantasy. So if he ends up as someone that, is somewhere between wide receiver 13 and 36, as wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 for fantasy purposes, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think he could be someone that is, just a solid player that you can have in your lineup as a flex or a wide receiver 3, something like that. But I don't see him becoming an elite player in the NFL. So it's a balance. You compare Burden to Egbuka and you think, well, okay, Egbuka is probably going to be someone that's a safer play in my lineup. But if you're shooting for that top 12 upside, Burden may be the better bet. So landing spot will matter. Draft capital will certainly matter. If Egbuka goes in the first and Burden goes in the second, we might see that those 2 players flip in my rankings. But I would imagine they're going to stay in my same tier. I just think that being in the second tier is a good spot for both of these players. And Egbuka would jump ahead of Travis Hunter if Hunter is not a full-time receiver. So these are the 4 players that I've been referencing. McMillan, Burden, Egbuka, and then Hunter would either be first or fourth, depending on, again, what happens with him and the team that drafts him. Moving on to tier number 3 and player number 5. I'm going to go against consensus here. I'm actually going to go with Trey Harris, wide receiver out of Ole Miss, projected second-round pick, and he's 23.1 years old as of early April here. So definitely the age is a bit of a factor that is concerning, older than you would like. But 6'2", 205 pounds, he definitely has the size that you're looking for. And analytically, his numbers are incredible. And so if you've listened to this show for a while now, you know that I tend to favor that production and the analytical side of things a pretty good amount. I want to see production. I want to see those numbers on the field. And especially when you compare that up with good size and speed, in my mind, you're looking at a good prospect. So the age is definitely a negative, but Last year at Ole Miss, he had 60 catches for 1,030 yards and 7 touchdowns, and he did all of that in just 8 games. So he was on an incredible pace if he had played out the whole season with Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. I mean, we're talking about somebody that would have had some of the best production in the entire country, and certainly in this draft class, had he been able to finish out the season. So great against man coverage, just really, really good numbers. One of the best in the entire country against man, but also good against zone as well. So just a really good, solid player, good on tape. The numbers match up with that. It's really the age that is the biggest concern. And then being, of his, size, I think he's somebody that's going to last in the NFL. He's wide receiver 1 size. And then some people I've noticed seem to have some separation or release concerns with him. I don't necessarily see that as much, but I do worry about the separation just in general with every prospect. That's a big factor for me, which is why there are going to be some guys a little bit later that while I like most things about their game, I'm a little bit worried. It's kind of my one worry with McMillan. So Trey Harris, I do have him at number 5. If he can sneak into the first round, that would be great. But right now, I think a very solid second-round pick and someone that I would be more than happy to take in the early half of the second round of rookie drafts. At number 6, and in the same tier, tier 3, I do have Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas. Projected first-round pick, potentially second, but it seems like the trend right now is that he's going to be a first-round pick. And 21.7 years old, so definitely has the age factor on his side. 5'11", 191 pounds. Last year at Texas, 58 catches, 987 yards, and 9 touchdowns. It worries me that he never had a 1,000-yard season. Transferred over from Houston, but he certainly has the speed. Had the fastest time at the NFL Combine with a 4.29, and had a really nice run in the playoffs. So that's really where his big breakout came, and that's why his draft capital has been pushed up into the first round now between the college football playoffs and the NFL Combine, which is all well and good. And, I think the draft capital is going to be very important here because if the NFL views him as a first-round pick, he might end up bumping ahead of Trey Harris in my rankings. Probably, again, the same tier, but draft capital is going to matter, so I'll let the NFL tell me that I'm wrong instead of doing that ahead of time. And the big worry for me with Golden is simply that he didn't have the production. I mean, he played an entire season, conference championship, playoffs, and still didn't have a 1,000-yard season. Didn't have 60 catches, didn't have double-digit touchdowns. He had a knack of disappearing at times throughout the season. And for someone that, is being talked about as a first-round pick, I just don't see it. To me, he's kind of a poor man Xavier Worthy in terms of some of the metrics with him. I think he might be, maybe a better route runner, but I'm a little bit skeptical when I don't see the production there. It makes me wonder how he's going to all of a sudden turn it on in the NFL because some of the underlying numbers. We've talked about Ladd McConkey last year where didn't have the production, but he had some elite metrics in terms of things like yards per route run and just being a very efficient player. And that, of course, moved him up boards last year, and we saw him succeed with the Chargers. But Matthew Golden doesn't even have that. Excuse me. His numbers don't reflect someone that really should be a first-round pick. And so part of me wonders if it's something where, given that this draft class is a bit underwhelming at the position, could he being pushed up the board? In last year's class, I think we're talking about someone that wouldn't have even been in the conversation to go in the first round. So it is kind of interesting to see the dynamic play out this year, again, with a potentially weaker class. But I'm going to let the NFL probably help, in my opinion, of him because as of right now, I just don't see it. So I don't want to, pump him up on my own when I just haven't made that, commitment to him being in my top 5 yet. It's a switch from my initial rankings from about a month ago, where I did have Golden ahead, but after digging into things a little bit more and being just very impressed with Trey Harris, I made that change for today's show. And we'll see. It could change again post-draft, depending on where they both go. But for now, Matthew Golden is my number 6 wide receiver. At number 7 is going to be Jaden Higgins, wide receiver out of Iowa State. He kicks off tier number 4, which has 4 players in it. And this is where these 4 players are all very close for me. You could probably rearrange them in just about any order, and I wouldn't be upset about it. And I think that all 4 of these players' draft capital is going to matter. They're projected. Jaden Higgins is probably more of a solid second-round player, but generally speaking, these guys are all second, third-round type of guys. Who goes in the second, who goes in the third will probably matter a lot. But Jaden Higgins, for now, is at the top of this tier, and he is 22.3 years old, 6'4", 214 pounds. So we're talking about another big X outside receiver. I worry about separation for Jaden Higgins. That's my big concern. Being of his size, I think he maybe reminds me a little bit of a Keon Coleman type of player, maybe a little bit bigger, but Keon Coleman-esque, where he's got good hands, he can play on the outside, but maybe would be a little bit better suited as a power slot type of player. But he played on the outside for the most part at Iowa State. His teammate, Jalen Noel, was the slot guy, and he's, spoiler alert, he's also in this tier of 4 guys. And it was a really good pairing at wide receiver. He had 87 catches for 1,183 yards and 9 touchdowns. And if you focus on sort of all the other numbers in terms of yards per route run and how he holds up against man coverage and zone coverage, his numbers are good. He is someone that can be a starting receiver in the NFL and could end up being a pretty good value in the second round. It's just a matter of, is he going to be able to get open? And so I think it's important to acknowledge that there's some risk here. But if he can put things together, the rest of his profile suggests that he can be a very good receiver in the NFL. So Jaden Higgins at number 7, and the first player in tier 4. At number 8 in this tier is going to be Jalen Royals, wide receiver from Utah State, projected second, third round capital, and 22.1 years old, 6 foot, 205 pounds. Jalen Royals might be my favorite sleeper in this draft right now, especially at wide receiver. He is someone that kind of fits what I'm looking for in a receiver, somebody that is a route runner. He gets open. He's got the size that you're looking for to be in the middle of the field, and he got better every season. He started off at a small military institute junior college and then transferred over to Utah State. Didn't do anything his first season there, but then broke out in his second season at Utah State for a huge season. And then this past year, he got hurt. So he did play 7 games, and he had 55 catches for 834 yards and 6 touchdowns. But I think what was most impressive about this profile, with looking through the game logs and everything like that, his final 4 games of the season before getting hurt against Temple, Boise State, UNLV, and New Mexico. So not necessarily the strongest competition, but if we're talking about a Mountain West school, Boise State and UNLV are the 2 best schools, at least last year, in that conference. So 40 catches, 666 yards, and 5 touchdowns in that 4-game stretch. So he was their entire offense, essentially, for those 4 games. And, high-scoring games, so you got to take it with a bit of a grain of salt. But to me, it shows the team focused on him. He was the clear guy that their passing offense ran through. And I think he can be a very good player in the NFL. We don't always see it work out with the small school guys, but I think that Royals is somebody that is worth a shot in the second round of your rookie drafts to become an impact player, where at a minimum he can be, I think, a solid wide receiver 2 for an NFL team, and should translate to some fantasy value as well. Next up at number 9 is Jalen Noel, slot wide receiver from Iowa State. So teammates with Jaden Higgins, projected, borderline second, third round pick, 22.6 years old, 5'10", 194 pounds. And this is someone that is almost just exclusively a slot player, which I think always gives a little bit of worry in terms of NFL value, but he's been a very productive player. Getting on the field as a freshman, he played 4 years, really good production his entire time at Iowa State. And his past season there, 80 catches, 1,194 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So he had a few more yards, very, very close, but a very similar receiving line to Jaden Higgins. So 2 very good players. I do like Noel. He had a very good combine. He's a very good athlete, and is someone that I think should find a role as a slot receiver, somebody that can turn into a number 2 player on, in a passing attack in the NFL. I don't necessarily see the high ceiling, elite type of situation for him. But I do think he can be a productive player, a very solid fantasy asset, should he get that starting role in an offense. So Jalen Noel at number 9 and in tier 4 in my wide receiver rankings. At number 10, Alec Ayormanor from Stanford. Bit of a tricky last name there, but he is a borderline second, third round pick as well. 21.8 years old, 6'2", 206 pounds. He's got the age on his side, and he was a solid player at Stanford. 63 catches, 831 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Not necessarily the most impressive stat line. He had another solid season a year ago with Stanford, which kind of included the game that really put him on the map. He had a massive, 200-plus yard game, 3 touchdowns. I mean, just an insane performance against Colorado in a game that went to overtime in 2023. And that really put him on the map. But my biggest problem with him is, while there are some nice analytical things about him in terms of, being an early declare and the age and size and speed and whatnot, he is very inconsistent. He has a couple nice games in each of his 2 big seasons, but I kind of worry that he's being propped up by just a handful of games. I don't know that he's a very consistent player. I think he can be a good route runner, but I don't know that he necessarily is going to be somebody that I am all that excited about drafting. I think if the NFL has a better opinion and he goes somewhere in the early to mid second round, that'll make me much more inclined to take him. But if he falls into the 3rd round, I think guys like Higgins and Royals and Noel are going to be guys that I'm more interested in. So for now, he's at the back of this tier, but he's going to be drafted most likely in that same range. And there are other analysts that like him as a prospect a little bit more than I do. So there will certainly be people in your leagues that are intrigued by him. So again, same tier, just at the back end for me, slotting in at number 10. At number 11, moving into tier number 5, which is kind of a bigger tier for me. There's 5 players here. It's the last one in my top 15. So players 11 through 15 are all grouped together. And starting off with Jack Beck, a wide receiver at TCU, projected 2nd or 3rd round pick, and 22.3 years old, 6'1", 214 pounds. You may have heard the name. Unfortunately, of course, his brother, who was a receiver at Princeton, was killed in the New Orleans terror attack that happened earlier this year. So, that, of course, was in the news, and you probably have heard this story before. So coming out of TCU, he's someone that had a very good final year. He transferred over there from LSU. So there's kind of your Louisiana connection. And he transferred. He had a very productive first year, kind of like a tight end wide receiver, like hybrid a little bit. But he played there with obviously some big names, Blake Neighbors and Brian Thomas and players like that. And was on the field producing with those guys. But then he transferred. He kind of fell off, from that position a bit. Had a slow start at TCU before breaking out again this past year with 62 catches for 1,034 yards, 9 touchdowns. He's got good size. He had an impressive Senior Bowl. And this is someone that, depending on where he goes in the draft, I think, again, can be a capable flex player, someone that is going to find his way in your lineup for bye weeks and can be just a solid player. But I worry about the fact that he kind of disappeared for a few years in the middle of his career, some ups and downs, had to transfer obviously away from LSU. So definitely some concerns. But as a player that's probably going to go at some point in the third round of your rookie drafts, he's one of very few wide receivers I think I'm okay with taking in the third and fourth rounds of your rookie draft. At number 12, I have Isaiah Bond, a wide receiver from Texas, who transferred over there from Alabama. So a couple of big schools, of course. Projected second or third round pick, and he's 5'11", 180 pounds. He's only 21 years old. But the size and the weight, it worries me. There's some players that did not even make my top 15 that I have size concerns about, guys like Tez Johnson and whatnot. So I'm a little bit wary of these smaller players. And Isaiah Bond, 4.39 speed at the NFL Combine, so he definitely is a quick, fast player. But he never really had great production. So last year at Texas, only 34 catches, 540 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He got on the field early at Bama as well, so it's not like he hasn't been able to get onto the field, but he just has never been an elite college player. He's been just a good, fine player at the college level, but I don't know that I see him being anything more than that at the NFL level. So even if he were to find a good situation and a good role, I'm not sure how fantasy relevant he's going to be. So he's at number 12 in tier 5 right now. Maybe if a team, shocks the world and takes him a little bit higher than expected, my opinion could change. But as of right now, I think he fits into this tier as someone who's going to have a role and he's going to score some fantasy points, but I just don't know if he's ever going to be more than, probably somebody that you stash on your bench to play on bye weeks and whatnot. And that I might be inclined to take a shot on some other players in the same tier that I think maybe have a higher upside but a lower floor. And that includes the player at 13 in these rankings, and that's Torrey Horton, wide receiver from Colorado State, projected fourth-round pick, and he's 22.3 years old, 6'2", 196 pounds, has 4.4 speed, and he got hurt last year as well. So 5-year college player, and transferred over from Nevada, and 26 catches, 353 yards, and a touchdown, but he only played 6 games before he got injured. So his 2 prior seasons at Colorado State, he had 96 catches, 1,136 yards, and 8 touchdowns, and then the season before, he also had a really nice year with 71 receptions for 1,131 yards and 8 touchdowns. So 2 very consistent, good years at Colorado State. He's got the size. He bulked up a little bit at 196. That was going to be a concern, I think, if he weighed in the 180s, which is what he was listed at in college. But coming in at 196, much better for his size, and eases up on some durability concerns. Obviously, he had the leg injury, so he seems like he's going to be ready to go. Was at the combine and whatnot. So Torrey Horton, I think, could be a solid sleeper on day 3, someone that maybe you're looking at in the third or maybe even fourth round of your rookie drafts. But he's someone that I think fits the bill as somebody you look for if you're going to take a receiver in the third round in the rookie draft, simply because a lot of times, you're probably going to steer yourself towards running backs, particularly in a class like this where there's so many good running backs. My list of receivers is going to be very, very short that I'm looking at in the later 2 rounds. Anyone that's outside of, past the third round, my interest level is certainly going to drop, especially this year where I just don't think the class is that great anyways. But Horton is someone that I do have my eye on and I think could be an interesting sleeper. At 14, another player that I think could be a good sleeper. Kyle Williams, a wide receiver, slot receiver out of Washington State, projected 4th-round capital. He's moved up a lot over the past month or two, I feel like. I don't think he was getting a lot of buzz early on in the process. 22.3 years old and 5'11", 190 pounds, so a little bit smaller. He is a slot receiver, but he's been a very productive slot receiver in college. So 70 catches, 1,198 yards, and 14 touchdowns at Washington State last year. He played there 2 years, transferred over from UNLV. So made that adjustment from a smaller school to a bigger school and still maintained production. In fact, produced more at Washington State. So he's someone that I've seen some buzz for, and given the nature of this class, could be somebody that you can snag later in your rookie drafts that might be worth it, again, at the position. And at number 15, the final player in this tier for me is going to be Savion Williams, wide receiver out of TCU, projected 3rd-round pick, and he is 23.3 years old, 6'4", 222 pounds. Big guy, another one of these receivers that definitely has, outside wide receiver capabilities. But Williams is interesting because I don't know that he is like that great at actually playing wide receiver, which of course is the reason why he's near the bottom of these rankings. But he's very versatile. He can run the ball. He actually had 51 rushing attempts last year for 322 yards and 6 touchdowns. I mean, he was arguably better on the ground than he was as a receiver. He still also had 60 catches for 611 yards and 6 touchdowns. So all in all, worked out to a lot of touches, a lot of yards, and of course a lot of touchdowns, 12 scores. So playing in the same offense as Jack Beck, who I think is a better wide receiver. But Williams is somebody that does have some upside, given that he can run the ball. He can be a bit versatile. I could see him being kind of a gadget player in the NFL. Has made some really nice catches. Also, not necessarily the best hands, but at that size and given his versatility, might be somebody worth taking a shot on. And he's pretty much at the bottom of my list here in terms of players that I'm willing and would be interested in drafting. There might be one or two other names here that I think could be interesting sleepers. Maybe Ricky White out of UNLV is somebody that did not make this top 15, but is somebody that had some good production, and I might be interested in throwing taking a flyer on him in the 4th round of a rookie draft. But Savion Williams at number 15 is the final player in this group for me, and really rounds out the list of receivers that I am interested in taking. I know there's some other big names that didn't make this list. Restrepo out of Miami, not somebody that I'm really that interested in. It's not that exciting of a class. I mean, last year on this episode, we had, 20 plus, we had 2 entire rounds of receivers that I was, willing to take. And it was just a much stronger class, certainly had better depth. Or at least it appeared that way at the time, because, of course, the bottom half of that top 24 did not exactly work out. But I think that the list of players in this class that are going to work out is going to be even smaller. Maybe half of this top 15 will probably work out. So, get your receivers early if you're going to do it. It's a very strong running back class. I would much rather take shots in the 3rd and 4th round of rookie drafts on those players than a lot of the other names that are going to be brought up that we didn't talk about today. But I will say that I think in terms of the first 2 rounds, there are a good solid 10 players, my top 10 here, that I think I would take in the top 24. It's just a matter of once you get past that, you're talking about some real dart throws and players that, sure, could they hit, but I'm just not that interested in this class as a whole. I don't feel awesome about a lot of these guys. Even some of the ones at the top, I have a lot more questions compared to last year where we could go 5-6 names deep, and I felt really good about all of them. There's no Malik Neighbors, no Marvin Harrison type of player in this class. I think Travis Hunter and Ted McMillan are very good, but probably more in the Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy range of player from last year. And, obviously we've seen now that can work out really well. But there's just not that one just dynamite, awesome player that is going to be great. There's no Jamar Chase, no, again, Neighbors, Harrison, etc. So, we'll see how things shake out. And but for now, there you have it. That's my top 15 wide receivers in this class. Running down the list again with the assumption that Travis Hunter does play full-time wide receiver. I have Travis Hunter at number 1, Tet McMillan at number 2, Luther Burden at 3, Emeka Egbuka 4, Trey Harris 5, Matthew Golden 6, Jaden Higgins at 7, Jalen Royals at 8, Jalen Noel 9, Alec Ayomanor at 10, and then rounding out the bottom 5 from 11 through 15, Jack Beck, Isaiah Bond, Torrey Horton, Kyle Williams, and Savion Williams. So there you have it. Next week we will talk tight ends. I'll get into that class, which has a couple of really strong players at the top. And then we'll have one more episode before the NFL draft hits at the end of April here. So we got an exciting few weeks coming up. It is almost finally that time for the draft and your rookie drafts to come up. So everyone should be getting excited about that. And so stay tuned for some more episodes as we talk rookies. You've been listening to the Dynasty War Room podcast. My name is Andrew Valancourt, and we will talk to you all next week.